Welcome to the Heart-Centered Entrepreneur Podcast. I want you to be rich. Yes, I want abundant financial success for your business. But I don't just care about your business making money. I care about you too. I want you to be rich in happiness, in the impact you make, in your relationships, and in how you give back. I'm Anna. I built my six-figure business as a side hustle while I was pregnant with my daughter in 2016. Now I've helped dozens of women do the same. I'm here to help you build a profitable, heart-centered, fully booked business with the latest tips on sales and visibility, with proven mindset hacks, and sneak peeks behind the scenes with what's working right now in the online space and in my business. Ready to make more money with heart? Let's go. Friends, I am level 10 excited this is your second time on the podcast, right?
I think third, actually.
Third time on the podcast.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. Shawne Arceneaux is a Somatic Visibility Coach, business mentor, CEO of AlignWell Collective. She helps heart-centered coaches, healers feel safe to be seen, embrace their authentic voice, grow their businesses with aligned strategy and sustainable systems. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here like in person. And it kind of feels surreal because, whenever you like work together with someone for a long time and then you like finally meet people in person, it's like the energy is unmatched. I feel like.
I'm so grateful. It is so interesting, like when you work with people online and you feel like, I feel like we've already hung out 9 times.
Oh, for sure.
But this is the first time we're meeting.
Right.
But it does not feel like that,
It does not
right?
feel like that at all. Yeah.
I know the online space is wild in that way, isn't it?
Yeah. It is so cool though, because it just kind of like reminds me of the relationships that you can build with people and how it doesn't have to be like physical closeness. Like you can be so emotionally and mentally connected and like heart connected with people. So yeah, I'm excited to be here.
I love that. And especially the topic I'm going to interview you on today, I feel like is related to that because you really help entrepreneurs channel that energy in a way that helps connect them in a way of getting visible with their audience and making those sort of connections. So maybe let's start there with visibility because I feel like it can be one of the biggest challenges for heart-centered entrepreneurs. Like, what are the first steps you would recommend when it comes to someone that's maybe getting visible online for the first time or some of those sort of things?
Ooh, yeah. Whenever somebody's getting visible for the first time, because it can be so scary. And that is like that's a big theme that I see with a lot of my clients is the fear, like the fear. And mainly it's the fear of vulnerability, the fear of like being rejected or messing up or not looking professional. I get that one a lot too. And so I guess like the first thing that I would say is like hmm, like connecting with the purpose of why you're doing this. Like why are you starting this business? Why do you want to be seen by people? Like what message do you have? And like connecting with that first before all of the other fears like come in, because I find that is, if you can get really, really clear on that, it really anchors you to everything else in your business. Like it allows you to show up more authentically. It allows you to um like not take in as much of the noise, because I know that there's a lot of noise in the marketing space. And so that's like the first step that I would have someone take is like connecting to, okay, why are we even doing this? And I'm not talking about like the reasons of making money or whatever, like what are the deeper reasons for why we're doing this?
That's so true. And I feel like that overlaps with like the why of your business. And I think sometimes we start online and we're like, oh, this is going to be easy. And we're like, wow, actually, this is hard, but it's worth it if I have that big enough why, or if I can connect. So I think it's actually a blessing in disguise when we have those visibility blocks, because it forces us to be like, do I want it? Like,
Yeah.
how willing am I to do this thing of being seen online?
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that, because I've actually had clients who like work with me and we do a lot of this like visibility work, and they actually end up, deciding I don't actually want to be an entrepreneur.
Yes,
Like I want to do,
yes.
which is totally fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. And it's just like you said, I think the willingness of like, am I willing to like be this vulnerable and like be seen by so many people if it's that uncomfortable for me? You know what I mean? And so it's like the work is either, not making it wrong that you're not comfortable with it, or doing that inner work to get comfortable with it,
Exactly. It's like, okay, what is going to be worth it for me? When it comes to you and you think about like maybe you can share some of your story about what makes it worth it for you to get visible, or maybe some of the visibility blocks that you've had, ways that you've overcome them, just if
Mhm.
anyone's listening and starting out so they can have like an example there.
Yeah, so whenever I think about, like, the start of my visibility journey, like, I've really been feeling called to this particular side of entrepreneurship because visibility is something that, like, I was exposed to a lot whenever I was a kid. I grew up in musical theater and I did, acting and I performed, I sang, and so, like, being visible wasn't really a problem, but it was always, like, a performance. And so anytime that I was being visible and it felt like it was just me, like not me performing in some type of way, usually whenever I was singing, because singing is a very vulnerable thing for me. Like my voice is like kind of just like a channel for me to express my emotions and stuff like that, especially if it's a song that has a lot of meaning. And so anytime I would mess up on a song or I wouldn't hit the note or like it wasn't done perfectly, I would get like criticized by like my voice teachers and my parents. Like no shame, like no hate to my parents or anything like that. They were just like wanting me to pursue something that I was really excited about, but then it kind of made me feel like, okay, there's this thing that I'm like really emotionally connected to that now doesn't feel like it's fully mine. And so in a lot of ways I felt like misunderstood whenever I tried to pull away from singing and stuff like that. And then whenever I got into the healing space, I could like sense the same emotions that I grew up with of like wanting everything to be perfect or not wanting to mess up, not wanting to like get rejected or whatever. And I saw so many parallels with all of the clients that I was working with and in my own journey. Like I knew whenever I started like being in the spotlight and started doing live videos and started hosting workshops and stuff like that, I would get the same kind of nervousness that I would get before I would sing a song in front of people and I would perform. And so there's like something about that that like really drew me to this work and it kind of makes me feel like there's like some divine intervention
Yes,
there.
yes, yes.
um but I do think that like part of my story is like I really love the side of entrepreneurship that isn't fake, that isn't like fabricated. Because I do think that as humans, we all like one of our core needs is to connect with each other. Like
Mhm.
that's like what brings everybody together. And whenever you can really start to be okay with being visible in a very authentic way, like it just kind of makes the world a better place. Like I know that sounds so cheesy, but like, that's whenever I think about my purpose, it's like how can I help people feel safe to be seen and share their gifts with the world? Because like whenever we do that, it again, it just like elevates human consciousness. And yeah, that I don't know if that answered your question. I'm kind of like going on a tangent, but yeah.
What do you feel like most keeps women back from being seen and sharing their gifts with the world?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's fear of being hurt. I think the way that our nervous system works if we ever had experiences whenever we were kids where we were misunderstood, where we were really embarrassed about something, where we were judged or criticized for like an opinion that we had or being a certain type of way, a personality trait, like that kind of stuff like stays with us. And even though logically we know that it's not dangerous to go out there and be ourselves and share our voice, like our body still remembers like that little wounded child or that one experience that kind of rooted that belief for us. And I think that a lot of people are just unaware that that's what's happening. They're unaware that their nervous system is like um working off of outdated programming. And so that's kind of what the work that I do with my clients is like help them become aware of the outdated programming and not want to push it away and not want to like, because it's not wrong. Like our bodies are doing exactly what they're supposed to. And it's just a matter of like looking at it from a different lens, looking at it from a lens of like love and compassion for whatever previous version of yourself was wounded by that traumatic experience. So that's like I think the biggest thing is like that unawareness of how our past experiences with being seen are affecting us now.
Yeah, I love that. Let's dive into that and even just more of the somatic work that you do with your clients, because I think
Mhm.
it's so interesting because when you see the surface of visibility, it's somewhat simple and easy, right? Like
Yeah.
hitting live and going live on Instagram. It's not that hard,
Yeah.
right? Like writing a social media post and clicking send, right? Like
Mhm.
it's not that hard, right? But it is when you think about the things that, like you said, like what if my family sees it and disowns me? What if
Yep.
a hater hates on it? And like these things feel like the bear is chasing us, like you were saying, even though, like we have this somatic response almost, right, in a
Mhm.
negative way. Um, and so it's interesting, and I totally agree that that work is the work that helps women get more visible, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, whenever you think, because I can even, like, pull on some of my own stories of, like, the first time. Well, like, whenever I first started my business, I was really feeling called to start doing live videos because I do love speaking. I love talking. I it's
Yes.
like a natural thing for me, like more so than writing. I mean, I like to write, but it's really natural for me to be on video to use my voice. And I was really feeling called to do live videos, but I hadn't done live videos since like back whenever I did like an MLM stint in, college. And so I still had kind of like some PTSD from that. And so the first, I mentioned to my coach, I want to do like one live video this week. And she's like, why don't you do 10 in a row? And I'm like, ah.
You're like,
Wait, what? And I'm not like one to back down from a challenge. So I was like, okay, let me do this. And I remember the first day of the 10 days that I did those live videos, like I can remember what my body felt like. My heart was racing. I was sweating. I was like breathing really fast and it felt like I was going to die. Like I was like
yes,
so
yes. Yeah,
nervous.
feels like danger.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, it does. And at the time, because I had just started my business, I didn't really understand what was going on.
Yeah.
After a few live videos, it ended up being fine and I was totally comfortable with it and it was nothing. But as I started doing like somatic work, I started noticing that there were moments in time that like my body was bringing me back to. Like there was this one, I think I was 5 years old. I was in a dance recital. I did tap and ballet, and we had a dance recital. Part of the routine was that we had to pop out of a Jack in the Box on stage on cue. And whenever my cue came, I froze, like completely froze. I was 5 years old. And I was so embarrassed. And because I missed my cue, I didn't want to pop out because I didn't want to mess up the routine. It felt like it took forever for someone to come and get me. All of my family was in the audience. Like I was so nervous and I didn't realize how much weight that memory held until I started doing my own somatic work and I started going to therapy. There was a lot that helped me like make that connection. So like those are the types of memories that are stored inside of our bodies. And then whenever we go to be visible for the first time in our business, especially if we're doing something new, like your body has this like memory of it actually being in that moment and like you feeling unsafe. And so that's like a big part of the first part of the program that I run with my clients is finding that safety to be yourself in your body and like know that like a bear is not chasing you,
Yeah.
you know?
I love that you're talking about this. Maybe if you'd like to, can you run us through an exercise, like maybe a lightly somatic exercise or like
Mhm.
something that someone can do if they are feeling that sort of activation while they are getting visible or selling or something like that?
Yes, yeah. So I actually have a little exercise that I give to a lot of my clients called the pre-visibility ritual. So
Okay. Tell us
yeah.
about it.
Okay, so the first piece of it is like you ground yourself, right? So like anytime, and this is something that like doesn't have to take super long. It can take like literally 30 seconds. So the first piece of it is to like ground yourself. So like you plant your feet on the floor, sit up straight, and we're just starting by like breathing, right? So like taking a few deep breaths. I like to place my hand on my heart all the time. This is like part of my pre-visibility ritual. So like placing my hand on my heart and then just like taking, let's say 10 deep breaths. As you like take those last couple of breaths, Just kind of like notice how your body's feeling now. Is it feeling a little bit more settled?
Mine is.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. And then the next thing that I like to do is create some kind of like affirmation, but start the affirmation with I am safe. Right? I am safe too. Like if you're doing a live video, I'm safe to go live on video and be myself. It's safe to mess up. It's safe to be imperfect. It's safe to stumble over my words. Like anything that you're afraid might happen. And then as you say that, like just notice how your body responds to it. Is anything shifting? Is anything changing? And then the last piece of it is to connect with like what message do I want to send today? What's the intention behind me getting visible? Is it to connect? Is it to relate? Is it to help people not feel alone? Is it to give hope, to inspire? And then just kind of doing whatever you need to do in your body to like release that energy. If you need to like get up and stretch or dance or whatever that is, and then opening your eyes and doing it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Again, so simple, but I think it's helpful to know that like that tool is available and it doesn't have to take long. You know, like there can if you pour all of that intention into that simple little, you know, and that's just an example of the format of what one can look like, but it's going to be different for every person. Like there's some people who like want to go for like a walk around their neighborhood before they sit down and actually do visibility work because moving their body really helps. There's, you know, I've also done like before a workshop, I've like put on like a pump up playlist and like danced around before if it's like a higher energy kind of workshop. So there's different ways, there's different things that you can do, but I like to give people the opportunity to create some kind of ritual that they do before they get visible so that they're always connected to their vision and they're not so much focused on like what everybody's got to think about them, but they're focused on the intention behind what their message is, you know.
That's beautiful. It's just so beautiful. Something I so admire about you too, Shawne, is like, since we get to work together,
Mhm.
just seeing you behind the scenes, like even in our sessions, like who you are now here in this podcast is who you are in our sessions. Like you're just a very grounded person
Mm.
and you do such a beautiful job of even like self-regulating yourself, or even see you in session, like to give yourself a breath. And I just think like,
Mhm.
what beautiful gift that you give to your clients that you really walk this talk and do this work. My
Mhm.
question for you is like, what made you most interested in somatics and
Mhm.
those tools? Obviously, it works so good for helping entrepreneurs with visibility, but like
Mhm.
maybe what most got you interested in somatics and what's your favorite thing about it?
Yeah, so I think the first somatic experience I had ever had, it was a sound bath.
Oh,
I'm
they're so
I'm
lovely.
obsessed with sound and I had no idea what they were, and so, like, the first time I went to a sound bath, the way that the person doing the sound bath explained it to me, she was like, "It's a massage for your nervous system," and I was like, "What does that
Ah,
even mean? Like, I'm so curious, what does that mean?" And so we did the sound bath, and during the sound bath, you know, there's not, like, really a lot of instruction, like, it's
yeah.
just the sound, and you are letting your body, like, take in all of the vibrations and the energy, and so whenever I was in the sound bath, I had this like amazing experience of like I got these really vivid visuals of like 5-year-old me, that little 5-year-old me that was on the stage that couldn't pop out of the Jack in the Box. And and I just like saw her playing. I saw her playing and like running around in a field and being so free. And I had like the most emotional response. Like I had never had that kind of experience before, and so after that, I was, like, hooked on everything somatic. I did so much research, I ended up signing up for a certification to become a certified somatic coach, and, like, that was a whole journey for me too. Um, But I also was, like, super curious about taking my clients deeper because, like, the work that I did with my clients up until that point was really deep, but then there were moments where I could tell that there was something there, that something deeper to explore with my clients, and I didn't quite have the knowledge or the skill set to be able to take them to the level that I know we could get to, and so somatics was the answer for that for me, that's when I started to, like, really do a lot more work for myself around it because, like, if I was gonna take my clients really deep like that, I needed to be willing to do that. So, I started to do my own somatic work, and whenever I was in my certification, it was like that invitation to go deeper in my own journey and then practice on the clients that I needed for my practicum for that certification. Um, my favorite thing about it, I think, is I think my favorite thing about it is that, um, it it doesn't have to be super intense. I think when people think somatic work, they think like really deep, like heavy, like we're excavating everything, like all of our past traumas and bringing that up. Like that's not what it is actually. It's actually so much simpler. And I think I love that about somatic work. Like simply taking 4 deep breaths can make such a big difference in the way that you're presenting or the way that you're showing up, and being visible or really like anything in your life. If I'm stressed out about something with my toddler or with my husband, like I go upstairs and take a little bit of time to do some of that like really quick somatic work and it totally changes my energy going into it. So I like how simple it is. Like it's really simple and it's almost so simple that like we like to overthink it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's so true. I love somatic work too because I think like especially as women like we are so body wise
Yeah.
and we're in a culture and at least for me like as like a busy single mom like I'm in my head a lot. I'm in my masculine. I'm in my business. I'm like tat 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 tat,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm not always in my feminine and so or in my body. And so I think for me practices that connect me with my body whether it's breathing or exercise like we forget how smart our body is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's the thing. Like it's a whole like we are very intelligent.
Yeah.
As women, we're very intelligent. But then we also have this whole library of intelligence in our bodies, not just our minds,
Yes.
that, like,
Yes.
we totally forget about.
Yes.
Like, I even think about because I come from the nursing background, and I
Mhm.
even think about, like, whenever I was working in the hospital and I would walk into a patient's room, their vitals would be fine, and, on paper, they would look okay, but, like, there was something intuitively that I'm like, "Something's not right." You
Yes.
know?
Yes. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, and that's the trust I think that, like, we lose as entrepreneurs because there's so much outside noise
Yeah.
that we, like, don't learn how to trust our own inner knowing,
Yeah.
and that can be confusing because we are also, like, wired to protect ourselves, and if we want, like, a stable business, we immediately go to externally, like intellectually, what can I do to actually like make this success happen versus like, okay, who do I need to be to my
Yeah.
core, which isn't so much a tangible thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be really frustrating, to like trust that something is going to happen or trust that like the universe is going to like, have your back essentially because there's not any like logical things that are leaving breadcrumbs for you.
Yeah. So good. But I think, especially in other cultures too, it really is honored like the
Yeah.
body wisdom, the intuition, the inner knowing. And even as someone who's more intellectual, like I know, and for me, it's like the more spiritual part too,
Yeah.
right? But just knowing that, like, not everything has to make sense. Not everything is going to have a reason, right? Like, exactly. Sometimes our body will know of our head before our head won't. I think we've all had an experience in life where we're like, ooh, no, this feels right or this feels wrong, and just trusting that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of the reasons why like I think whenever it comes to like starting a business or launching something new in your business, somatic work can be really helpful because it allows you to lean into that trust a little bit more. And the more you do that, the more you actually lean into that trust and start to know what it actually feels like in your body to trust yourself, it gets easier. Like it just gets easier. And obviously, there are going to be like more and more challenges as you grow, but that's kind of like what you're building the foundation off of. So you can support yourself in all of that, not just intellectually, not just like trying to figure out problems, but almost like surrendering, which is a scary word for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you work with your clients on visibility, what would you say are the most common, like, if someone's listening to this podcast and they're like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm stuck on getting visible, like, what would you say are some of the most common blocks or fears that someone, especially at the beginning of their entrepreneurship journey, is common for them to face?
Yeah, common. The one thing that came to my mind as you said that was I don't know what to say. I have no idea what to say. Either I don't know what to say or I don't want to say like I want to say the right thing.
Oh, and so what advice would you give to someone that's listening that's like that?
Yeah. And so like the question that always comes up for me whenever I hear that, because I've actually heard that a lot, even within the past week with my clients. Like, I don't know what
Uh-huh.
to say. And I'm like, what do you want to say?
Mm.
Like, what is it that you want to say? Like, regardless of what people are going to think about it, like, what's actually on your heart. And sometimes we do have to get a little bit we have to kind of like disconnect from the mind a little bit. So I bring my clients really deep and like have them do a lot of like somatic experiencing with me in session. And and then I use a lot of like writing and voice too. So sometimes I'll either tell people like take the next 5 minutes and just like pour out what comes up and don't filter yourself. You're not going to show this to anybody. Like just what is happening. Or I'll if they're not really into like writing, sometimes I'll have them use their voice and just close their eyes, not feel like they have to look at me, sometimes even turn off their camera if they don't want to feel the pressure and just like blurt out what's happening in their heart, not in their mind. And that is so helpful because like sometimes people will say, especially whenever I assign them to do this outside of session, they're like, yeah, I found myself really resisting it because I am sitting here like I don't know what to write about. And I'm like, well, start with that. Start with I don't know what to write about and see what that turns into. And a lot of times people are like, I didn't realize how much I do filter myself based off of like other people's opinions or what like what I've grown up with and how I've been raised and stuff like that. And it is interesting to start to see those little things like peel away. And it's not going to happen overnight, but like I find that when my clients that give themselves the space to do these practices, I have one client in particular who really wanted to start showing up on video on social media. She like that was like her goal by the end of this program. She wanted to be able to show up on video and like confidently and consistently. But she had never done it before. And so we started with voice memos, private voice memos, like for herself. She didn't even have to share them with me. So we started with voice memos every day, just like brain dumping. And then we moved on to like her maybe like recording a video of herself and getting herself used to seeing herself on camera. Again, not having the pressure to share it with anybody, just getting in the habit of doing it. And then we kind of like moved upwards in that level of visibility of like then she recorded a video and sent it to us, sent it to me, sent it to like had her husband watch it. And then finally I think it was about 3 months into our program, she came to our group call one day and she was like, I posted 3 videos this week. And like, she was so excited. She was like, it was actually not as hard as I thought it was going to be. And I'm like, yeah, because you allowed your nervous system to feel safe being seen in that way. You like took little sips instead of just like going straight to doing live videos, which felt really, really big and really dangerous. You allowed yourself to take those like smaller steps to get used to that act of showing up. And so that's why it doesn't feel as hard. Yeah.
I love that. I love the baby step. I think the baby step is like so underutilized by coaches. And I
Yeah.
think like when a client gets stuck on something, as coaches, sometimes we get insecure and we're like, okay, take a bigger step. Right.
Yeah,
And it,
problem solving
yeah.
mode, yeah,
And I
mhm.
really think what you said is so key, which is like make it smaller.
Yeah,
Right. And I think some people like they have this goal. And if they're not meeting that goal, they're like, I need to quit. Right. Instead of like,
yeah,
I need to make it smaller. And I love what you said about like just starting out with like, it's so interesting because I feel like when people have that visibility block, a lot of coaches will say, like, I don't know what to say. Okay, here's 17 content prompts,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But really often it's like, that's not really the problem, right? And
Mhm.
so I love that you just encourage them to do draft one, right?
Yeah,
So often we're editing
yeah.
in our head and we want the first thing to be out to be like this perfect polished little situation,
Mhm.
right? So I just love that permission to like draft one. It doesn't even have to go anywhere, right? Like just
Yeah.
pour it out.
Yeah, and that's actually something that that I remember practicing with you too, like right after I had my son, because I had like a lot going on whenever I had my son. I had preeclampsia,
Yes.
I had to induce early, and so there was a lot that I knew I wanted to share after that. And I remember you
Yes.
telling me like, "Why don't you just like record the podcast and don't post it?" And I
Yeah.
think I did. I recorded I think like 2 different versions of the podcast and I never posted it.
Yes.
But it was really helpful for me because it was helpful for processing. I think we forget too that like the content that we
Yes.
put out there, if we want it to be vulnerable and if we want it to land right, like those vulnerable stories also need to be processed in a really healthy way too before we even put them
Yes.
out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I love the example that you said of like that client that like did the baby steps, right? And I think some people might see that as an overnight success, like, oh, that person put out 3 videos in 1 week, but they don't see what you did with her behind the scenes, which is just really making her feel safe along the way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think that like, especially whenever I notice that there are entrepreneurs out there that I really resonate with, that I can tell are very heart-centered, very, focused on the beautiful work. I can tell that they do a lot of that healing work on their own because it does make you able to pump out content very consistently and very fast because you're not sitting there, you're not sitting there overly criticizing yourself or picking apart every little thing that you do. You just put it out there. And if there's typos, there's typos. If,
Yes.
it doesn't matter. I've
Yes.
literally done a live video or like a live, yeah, I did a live stream in somebody else's Facebook group with like thousands of followers and I had a coughing fit in the middle of it. And I
Yes.
couldn't,
I'm
like,
about it.
and then I think at the beginning of my business, I probably would have been so mortified. I
Yeah.
would have been mortified and just like torn myself apart afterwards. But after I ended that, I was just like, that was interesting,
Yes.
But people got it. Like people really resonated with it. And I think that was one of the things that I started to notice about being visible is it's not like people think that when we're thinking about being visible for our business, it has to be perfect. It has to align with all of our messaging, like all of our content pillars have to be it gets a little too like
It's
technical.
too much.
It's
It's
too
too much.
much.
It's not, no, we don't need that. No
It's
one has time for that.
no one has time for that. Like what like I would not want to build a business where I felt like I was a slave to my business. And so that's another thing about visibility is like you also have to think about your energy. Like if I know I'm going to have a lower energy week, I prep for that whenever I have higher energy. And so I have the freedom to still show up in my business but then like not really be on and it is like a huge gift whenever we talk about sustainability in a business. Like that's the goal here. Is like I always try to tell my clients like if you keep doing it this way where you feel the inspiration and you feel the pressure to put it out right there, it's not going to be sustainable. Like you're going to burn out so fast.
Yes, so true. Okay, as we start to wind down, tell us a little bit about I know you got to preview a little bit here. I love that
Mhm.
grounding exercise. I'm like, give it to me.
Yeah.
Tell us more about your mastermind, where you do more of that somatic work, and
Mhm.
just if women have been listening to you and they're like, I feel calm just listening to Shawne and I need more of her podcast and energy. Like, where can women find you online? How do they get more details there?
Yes, yeah. So I do have a podcast called Vibrant Visibility, and that's also the name of my mastermind. It's also the name of my group program. So it's a 6-month program that's very like based in the somatic work first, and then like we kind of start at this like really slow nurturing pace. Like it's a very slow program, but that's super, super intentional because I think when people like join business containers, they think about like, okay, I have a checklist of all these things that I'm going to do. And like, I'm going to learn how to sell and which is totally great. But like, I think the work that I do here is where like people have trouble slowing down. And so I give a lot of space in that beginning part of the program where they can slow down. We do a lot of that like reflection work. I teach them a lot of different somatic exercises. And we start with like that awareness of like, what is it that holds us back from being seen? Like, truly, what is it? What memory comes up? Like, what is that like deeply rooted fear? Is it the fear of being rejected? Is it the fear of not being enough or not being worthy or not being accepted? Whatever that is. And then we kind of like work with that fear and hold it through the entire program so that by the end of it, whenever I'm teaching on creating content and writing, vulnerable posts and, really authentic marketing, it doesn't feel so scary, So it's kind of like this really intentional progression of like starting really slow, giving yourself a lot of space, not making it wrong that you're not exactly where you want to be. And then like we're kind of towards the end of my current group right now, but we recently did a call on like language, on the language that you use in your marketing, and all of them are feeling so much more centered. If I had done this at the beginning, none of them would have felt ready for it. None of them, but all of them were just like feeling so in flow with it. They were all like writing different stories of like how they would talk about their coaching, and it felt so good. And so that's kind of like the gist of what my mastermind does. Is it's a lot of somatic work in the beginning, and then it's, sales and marketing, but with a somatic twist to it, like using all of the tools that I teach them in that beginning part to help sustain every area of growth after that as they continue to grow.
I love that so much. I think too, especially because when we see things that see simple again, like visibility, like messaging, like that are really complex things, I think we go in and then we try to do it and it doesn't work and we get discouraged
Yeah.
and we're like, oh, something's wrong with me. So I love how you do your program in the foundation so that when you do get to the messaging, when you do get the visibility, they have that foundation and framework and they're like, oh, actually, this is easy. But
Yeah.
because they did all that shiz before, right?
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh my God, I can't figure out my one liner. Oh my God, I can't go on live 10 times in a row. What's wrong with me? Right.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I love that you said that, because I've said that so many times to all of my clients. It's not wrong that you feel that way. Like,
Yes.
it's not wrong that you're scared to go live. Like, don't make that wrong.
Yes.
Don't make it
Yes.
that like it's something wrong with you. Your body is just doing what it's programmed to do.
Yeah.
But it's also outdated programming, and we can reprogram it.
Yes. Oh, that's so beautiful. So like it's almost like even though it might like seem like it takes longer, it actually is shorter.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like this actually is the shortcut. The
It
long step is the
is. It
shortcut.
100%
Yeah.
is. Yeah, even though it doesn't feel like it, because people
Yes.
get I do see that people get frustrated with, how slow it's going. And
Yes.
I'm like, "Okay, tell me more about that. Like, why is it
Yes.
frustrating that it's slow?" Because that's another thing, like, as coaches, I firmly believe that, like, to be able to support our clients, like, really well, we have to meet them exactly where they're at and not have this
Yes.
expectation that they're gonna be somewhere else.
Which is so hard, right?
Mhm.
Because we're like, number one, sometimes like it's out of love. Like, we're like,
Yeah.
I want you to be over here. So here's 900 steps you need to take right now. And then the client's like, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I do think it is such an act of love, like you said, to go slow, to pace. And it is the fastest way,
It is.
really.
Yeah. Yeah, slowing down
Mhm.
to speed up, and it's so counterintuitive, but then it also kinda goes back to that trust. Like, how much do you trust yourself to, like, take this slow and be where you are right now, and know that eventually this is gonna get you to, like, that, like, big vision, that big 10-year, 20-year vision eventually?
Yes. 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 And in hindsight, right? Like in the moment,
Yeah.
we're like, oh my gosh, this is so slow. But in hindsight, it's actually fast. Like you got over like childhood trauma in 6 months.
Yeah.
Like that's
That's
pretty
a
amazing,
lot.
right?
It's
Yeah.
a lot. I'm so impressed with my clients sometimes whenever they come to calls and they're like, like they're doing some amazing things, like having really hard conversations with toxic
Yeah.
family members. And I'm just like, let's not skip over that for a minute. Like, that's really
Yes.
awesome. We need to
Yes.
celebrate that. And they tend to like brush it under the rug. And I'm like, no, no, no. Like, that's huge.
It's a
Yeah.
big deal. I love this conversation so much. Okay. Recap one more time where people can find you and then let us know if you have any final words.
Yeah. So I am on Instagram, Facebook, everywhere at Nurse Coach Shawne. It's Shawne with an E. And yeah, I think the final words here is like, I think I talked about like one of the core needs of us as humans is to like feel connected, but there's another core need that we all do like want to be seen, right?
Mhm.
And so I don't know if there's reasons for anyone listening that they have that they're thinking of in their mind right now of like why they deserve not to be, but it's like a core need of human beings to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel loved, to feel accepted, worthy. And so doing this work I think is, I don't know, it's one of the most important types of work to do as people who help other people.
That's beautiful. Just beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the show.
I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me again.
Thanks for hanging out today. Please hit that subscribe button so you can make sure to stay updated anytime a new episode drops. And I would love for you to join me in my free Facebook community. It's called The Heart-Centered Entrepreneur. We discuss the podcast episodes. I regularly go live and do free trainings. And you may even meet your newest biz bestie. So you can join at heartcenteredcommunity.com. It's absolutely free, and I cannot wait to see you in there.